Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our June Outdoor Florida webinar hosted by the Office of Greenways and Trails. My name is Doug Alderson, and today we are featuring wildlife photographer John Shinner. And John will showcase the opportunities in Florida for wildlife photography. And as you will see, he will use examples from coastal settings, forests, and marshes, and we'll share a few tips. So before we get into the webinar, a couple of reminders. At the end of the show, we'll have questions and answers. So you can use the chat or the question and answer key at the bottom. And also this webinar is being recorded. So we will show this on the State Parks YouTube channel, either on, I can post it if it's an avid photographer, camper, and kayaker. He enjoys and appreciates the year-round outdoor experiences that the state of Florida has to offer. He is also a kayaker. In 2020, he was the 30th person to complete the entire 1,500-mile Florida circumnavigational saltwater paddling trail. So that's a huge accomplishment. So thank you again, John. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and see your incredible photos. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Doug. Well, hello, everybody out there in TV land. Thank you for tuning in, and for those of you who are going to watch this on the video, thank you for your attention there. Yes, I am a wildlife photographer, retired, and I feel blessed that I live in Florida, because Florida to me is a paradise for wildlife photography and outdoor activity, since we have a year-round climate and a super diverse ecosystem. Before I get into the changing slides and into the whole thing, I want to thank everybody involved in taking care of our great outdoors: park rangers, greenway people, planners, anybody and everybody who's involved with taking care of Florida's great outdoors. For me personally, the outdoors is sacred ground, and for those who take care of it and make the experience that much better for all of us, are heroes to me. So thank you all. So wildlife photography in paradise. If you're interested in more of my work, you can find me on Instagram at JW Shinner. And I think Doug gave me a slight bio, so I'm going to skip over this pretty quickly. But you know, by offering year-round opportunities, Florida is an incredible place, and I am honored to share some of the pictures that I've taken. And we're going to go on a little bit of a journey around Florida of some of my favorite spots. I'll talk a little bit about the technique and the ethics of wildlife photography first. Generally, the technique is pretty straightforward: is a good high-resolution camera and a strong telephoto lens, and you can pop out and start taking pictures of whatever you happen to see out there: birds, mammals, whatever's nearby where you're at, or if you travel to various parks and wildlife management areas. There are other techniques involved with wildlife photography, and I'll talk a little bit about those when we come up to a picture that I might have used something different. I'll keep the jargon to a minimum, but I'll be happy to answer any questions about photography and the technologies and technique in the question and answer period. I will mention some things as I go along, as far as how I took a picture or some things along those lines. There is an ethics to wildlife photography, and it's very important for me to stress that aspect of it. Our wildlife is precious, and some of the opportunities of seeing some of these creatures are dwindling. So it's really important that we do everything we can not to bother them when we're taking their pictures and observing them. So a strong lens, a strong pair of binoculars, and keep your distance. That's the biggest no is to get up into a wild creature's face, and it'll stress them out. It'll, it just is not good. To put it that way, it's not good. So it's always wise to keep your distance. You'll see more natural behaviors that way anyway, and other people will, appreciate the fact that you're not standing in front of them and scaring off the wildlife, trying to get that super shot. So anyway, also when I present my work, I do a lot of editing in Photoshop. I crop the pictures. If they're a little bit not as flat, I might add some contrast. I'll do some things to it, but again, part of the ethics of photography in general, but and wildlife particularly, is with new technology out there like artificial intelligence, you can add and subtract all kinds of things and put it in a picture that looks very real. For me, there's no issue with doing that as long as you, the photographer or the creator of the image, makes it known that that's what they've done. If you try to pass off a picture that you've added a bunch of stuff to as a photograph without that kind of attribution, I think that's kind of morally shaky ground. So it's really important that what people are seeing, they know how it was created. The pictures you'll be seeing that are mine, there's no artificial intelligence or no added backgrounds or anything like that. I try to keep that natural. I do the normal post-production work of contrast, color, saturations, things along those lines. Cropping is the biggest thing. Many of these creatures and animals are pretty far away. And even in the camera with my lens, I still have to crop in to bring them in closer so we can see more detail. That's probably my biggest post-production characteristic. All right. I think I've babbled through a lot of that. Let's see. So now we're going to take a tour of some of my favorite places in Florida to go take wildlife photos. I'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll talk a little bit more about opportunities that you might have in your part of Florida. And off we go. By far, because I live in Orlando, by far my most common place that I go to, and probably my favorite place in the state, is called the Orlando Wetlands. And the Orlando Wetlands is a man-made series of ponds and marshes where they treat water from one pond to the next. The water goes and is filtered by natural means, and then eventually it's so clean it can be released into the St. Johns River. The result of that process has created this huge marshland that is extremely rich in food sources for all kinds of wildlife and birds. There's probably, from what I understand, talking with the people who run the place, there are probably more birds and wildlife per acre in the Orlando wetlands than there is in a natural marsh area because the concentration and the food sources are so high. So that makes it an extremely fun place to visit just with a pair of binoculars, but with a camera, the opportunities, particularly for birds and wading birds and things like that, is phenomenal. This picture here is kind of an example of that. I mean, there's just lots of roseate spoonbills, which are a beautiful bird if you like pink. Their beaks are a little weird looking, but but they are an incredible a photographic opportunity and experience. They're fun. They have a lot of personality, and at the wetlands, there's a huge colony of them, and it's really fun to go down there and watch the roseate spoonbills. And I probably have a few pictures of rosettes as as we go along here, but one of my favorite parts of wildlife photography, and particularly with birds, is action work. I love to take pictures of birds flying, of them interacting, of doing things other than standing there and looking at me. I love a good bird portrait, don't get me wrong, but if I can get a good action shot, I am all about that. And in this particular case, this beautiful bird flew right near me in a beautiful lighting of the early morning sun, and you can really get a flavor of that pink, and they're really a graceful flying bird. Um, it's fun to catch them when they're landing. They uh, spread their wings out, and it's just gorgeous. I'm not sure I can explain much more than that. I think the picture speaks for itself. Now, there is one thing about this picture that I did want to point out, and I'm going to talk about that as we go along, is that when I shoot a photo, I also like to not only get the subject, which in this case is the Rosette landing, but I also like to consider what the background might look like. And in this case, there is this beautiful early morning light shining on the marsh, and the contrast of that with the pink just really helps make this picture for me. And so I'm trying to always be aware of the background, the context of the picture. Um, Now, I'll take this picture whether that's a nice background or not, because it's such a beautiful shot. But um, for a picture that you might want to hang on your wall or something, it's always good to keep in mind not just your subject, but what's also framing your subject and things along those lines. Multiple pictures of spoonbills. I think we're going to be spoonbilled out by the time we're done with the Orlando wetlands, but they offer all kinds of fun opportunities with the posing and things. They're wading birds, and most of the time they're in the water wading, but there are perches and things at the wetlands that they like to land on and take off from and do all kinds of cool stuff like that. Another of the common birds, I say common, but ones you will see at the wetlands are the sandhill cranes. And the sandhill cranes, of course, are big and um, really interesting looking birds. And normally they're on land too, poking at the sand, digging up bugs and whatever they eat. But this pair happened to walk into the lily pads, which again I thought was a beautiful background. And the marshes of the wetlands really are great for getting these kind of different pictures that you might not normally see. Oftentimes we'll see sandhill cranes by the side of the roads or out in fields. So it was kind of a treat to see them out in the lily pads, cooling their heels and looking for small bugs, I guess, water bugs and things out there. And of course, one of the most popular parts of wildlife photography, particularly for birds, is during nesting season and when the little hatchlings come out and you get to see some of the baby birds. And in this case, these are two sandhill crane colts, which hatched last year, and they were not shy about walking around all over the place. So it was really easy to stand back and get a picture. And this brings me back to the ethics of wildlife photography. Um, these particular colts were so popular at the wetlands that there were lots and lots of people taking their pictures. And it got to a point where they had to post a sign asking people to keep their distance because people were getting up too close and disturbing their natural feeding and walking around habits and behavior. This was taken with a very long telephoto lens. I'm laying on my stomach, and it was kind of fun. You can almost relate as a parent. The mama is looking at the two, making sure they're not tussling with each other, and she's keeping a watchful eye on them. So it's kind of fun. The purple gallinule. That's a bird that we'll see a lot at the Orlando wetlands, and it's probably my favorite of the small birds. Um, the colors are just beautiful. The primary blues, it's almost a peacock in its shading as far as the colors go, and it's always a treat to see the purple gallinules. And one of the reasons why I like going back to the wetlands. Now, you can take hundreds of pictures of the same bird or the same mammal or whatever it is that you're trying to get and still not get everything that you want to get. So going back on a regular basis is always fun because there's always something different and new about a picture. This particular one is posing a little bit for me, and I was more than happy to take that picture. I like this picture of the gallinule too. This shows a lot of the texture of the feathers and the color. And we also notice that these birds have really big feet. They look kind of kind of comical, but they use that feet to walk on the lily pads and on the floating debris in the marsh, and uh, it's just really fun. And the fact that it's yellow, you got yellow and red and blue, the primary colors, it's just really a spectacular looking bird. Alligators. The Orlando wetlands is home to about 3,500 alligators, and generally I try to stay away from them, and thank goodness for a telephoto lens. This big old monster was walking in the shallows, and when he raised his claw up, it looked very menacing and scary, but it made a great shot. I really love this shot because you can see all the detail of how their armor and their scales are put together, and they're a pretty intense creature. Telephoto lenses are your friend when we're talking about very big and dangerous animals. This is one of my favorite pictures, a snowy egret taking off while an alligator is watching. I look at this picture and I think that alligator, you put a chat bot over its head, it would probably be saying something like, "I wish I could do that." I don't think it's thinking, "I wish I could eat that." I think it wishes it could fly. But I thought it was a great combination of with the bird and the alligator, um, and so again, I try to look at where the picture, my subject is and what the background is. And I was very fortunate that this alligator was swimming along and all of a sudden it swam right into the reflection of this great blue heron that was standing on the shore. And I thought, oh, that might make an interesting picture. And yeah, you be the judge of that. I thought it was kind of interesting. Um, again, something a little different than just a picture of a bird standing on the shore or an alligator in the water. Uh, I'm always looking for that kind of opportunity. The classic alligator picture. Um, again, the telephoto lens is your friend here. I did not get it. I was not close. This is cropped in. This is from quite a distance, but I thought it was pretty dramatic bringing it in like that. And the Orlando wetlands is like I say, is one of my favorite places. You'll find all of these things there. Just, you can be there for an hour, and everything that I took a picture of, you could see there within an hour. It's just an amazing place. So those of you who don't live in the Orlando area, but you come this way, check out the Orlando wetlands. This is a least bitter, and they migrate in. They're not year round here. And I love this picture because if you look at the bird and you look at the background, they almost match. I don't think there's a better illustration of how the camouflage and the coverings of animals can sometimes match their surroundings. This bird is flying at about 35 miles an hour. And I was fortunate to get the picture. And I saw it at the last second. I only got this one shot, but it blends in so well that at that speed, you can see how they can get to their prey without the prey realizing that until it's too late that they're there. But it's a beautiful bird, and I thought the background was interesting. This is a snowy egret, and they like to hunt by flying over the water and uh, snapping at fish off the surface of the water. And I caught this one in mid-snap. If you can zoom in on sometime on this picture, or if you can see on your screen, he actually was successful. There's a little minnow or small fish in his beak, and they catch that upside down at high speed, and it's really fun to watch these animals when they are hunting. Again, the Orlando wetlands is just a prime place for finding opportunities like this. And the anhingas. Anhingas are, we call it a snake bird. They swim underwater and they grab a fish. They're not uncommon all around Florida. But sometimes you can catch a lucky break and catch one in mid meal, like this one is. They what they do is they spear their fish with their beaks, throw them in the air, and then catch them and swallow them down. I caught this one just as it was about to grab it and swallow it. The anhinga on the right is in breeding colors, and I was just walking around and I saw this thing with this bad hair day, and I took its picture. And again, with uh, a totally different look. If you could look at the two of them, the green around the eyes and things, let you know that there's it's in the breeding season and it's getting ready to start courting other anhingas and hopefully have a successful breeding season. Um, but I think he should comb his hair before he gets, too serious about trying to get a date. Anyway, and we're getting into the last slides of the Orlando wetlands. Again, the various opportunities, small birds like yellow-bellied woodpeckers, the green heron. I don't know if you can see, but he has a little minnow in his beak as well. Its beak, I'm not sure if it's he or she. And on the right-hand side are the black-bellied whistling ducks. And I thought that was a really fun scene with the duck jumping off of the palm tree. They make their nests in the tops of these trees that are like dead palm trees. And I'm not sure what's going on there, but it looks like one of them is mad at the other one, and he's scooting out of there. The black-bellied whistling ducks are common at the wetlands, and they are really fun to watch. They have a lot of personality. They're always chasing each other and whistling at each other and doing all kinds of activities. So again, it's at the wetlands. It's just one of those birds that's worth coming back to on a regular basis. And we can't forget, non-bird species, the soft-shelled turtle. This beast was nesting. She was laying eggs and was stationary. So I was able to get on my belly and get a couple of nice photos, little portrait shots of her while she was doing her thing. The little warblers are there. They're hard to get because they move fast. But the warblers are a beautiful bird, and there are several species that migrate to Florida, and it's always a treat to get a good picture. Black vultures, they're not pretty, but they do a really important job by keeping place clean. And there's a lot of texture in that I really like as a photographer. I like to get the texture and the detail of the wildlife. And the raccoons, they're we don't see many raccoons at the wetlands, but they're there. And I've gathered the alligators keep them away from the breeding birds, so there's a kind of a symbiotic relationship. But it's always a treat to get a picture of things other than birds when you have that opportunity. And now I was going to talk about using a long telephoto lens as the general rule or general way of getting wildlife photography, but there are other animals and creatures that a telephoto lens may or may not be helpful for because they're much smaller, they're tiny. And so it's always fun when you have an opportunity to get a picture of a beautiful butterfly or a green anole, which is one of the only, I think it's the only native anole to Florida, it's the green one. And to get down and get the beautiful texture and colors of these animals, a telephoto lens that focuses very closely so that you can get relatively close is very helpful. Cropping with a high resolution digital camera is also very helpful because, again, in the viewfinder, these creatures are not large. So when the finished product is done and I'm on the screen looking at it, cropping in and to bring it in closer really helps. On the right is what they call these pig frogs out at the wetlands. I guess they're a kind of a bullfrog. You can hear them out there all the time, and they're a favorite food of many of the birds out there. All right, well, that's the end of the Orlando wetlands. My next journey is to the East Coast, and we're going to the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge. Now, Merritt Island is right next to the Cape Canaveral and the rocket launch place, but it's a beautiful tract of land that migratory birds use as a way station when they're flying from north to south and from south to north. In this case, we have white pelicans, which come down from the Midwest, from Michigan and places along those lines, and they're one of the largest birds out there. And I really liked this picture because of the spoonbill standing next to him. You can get a spoonbill is not a small bird, so you can kind of get an idea of how large the white pelicans are. Um, and they're a beautiful bird in flight, and they come to the Orlando wetlands, and then they head south toward the Everglades and parts down in South Florida. Spoonbills again. Well, I love this picture, and again, any opportunity to get birds interacting with each other is kind of my meat and potatoes as a photographer. I love things when birds are with each other, doing things with each other, or in some cases there is bird on bird crime. In this case, I think they're just playing a little bit of tagging, a little rough. These are young spoonbills, and they were just kind of roughhousing a little bit and playing around. But it was fun to watch. At Merritt Island, because of the migratory birds, sometimes you get large groupings of birds in one spot. And I was fortunate to happen onto this grouping, and there are several different species all together. And for whatever reasons, they all decided to take off at the same time and book out of there. And it was fun to get this picture. I call it like my Noah's Ark picture. But if you count, you'll see there's at least 5 different types of wading birds in this picture. And that's always a blast to see. And at Merritt Island, you're likely to see that. This is a white ibis. Now, white ibis, I think, is a very common bird in Florida. We see them a lot, even in neighborhoods, eating bugs and things out of the yard and stuff. But during breeding season, they turn a deep red in their face and in their legs. And they look a little bit like a Dr. Seuss character when it comes to that. Um, so I thought it made a beautiful picture. And again, I'm looking at the background as well. We have the reflection of the off the water is nice and hazy, so it really accentuates the bird and the subject in this case. But yeah, until I started taking pictures of wildlife, I really didn't understand or know how birds change dramatically in their looks when it comes into breeding season. And the ibis was quite a revelation. This is a tricolored heron, and again, using looking at the whole context of the picture, there was a beautiful reflection in the still waters of the bird as well. And I try to capture that when I see that, and it just kind of makes an interesting image. The tricolored heron is, obviously named because of it has many different, it has at least three different colors on it. You can see blue and purple and yellow and gray, and so it's really multicolored heron. But they're very common at Merritt Island. That's probably the most common wading bird is the tricolored heron. So it's fun to be out there and looking for them. And this is a little blue heron, and again, I've love getting an action shot if I can. And in the case of this bird, I caught him right as it was hitting the water and the water was spewing up. From a photo technique, this picture is possible because I'm using a very high shutter speed, like 1/3200th of a second. So it can freeze the water coming up in the action. And again, with the reflection of the water and in the background and things, it kind of accentuates the subject matter, in this case, the blue heron. And that happened so fast. I mean, I probably shot 15 pictures, and one of those 15 was this one, because this happened so quickly. And they snatch a fish right out of the water in a fraction of a second. Another tricolored heron. And again, using the high shutter speed and then looking for that reflection. I really love this picture because you have water coming up from its from its feet, and from its attack of its prey. And again, it's Merritt Island will give you opportunities like this. Ospreys. Ospreys are common in marshes and things like that, but they're very common on the coastal waters. And Merritt Island is on the coast. And I was fortunate to catch this bird as he was taking off from a perch. And it was get a really good idea of how long those wings are. Osprey can carry a pretty good sized load once, and they're sitting in the water after diving, and they have to get a fish out of the water. Though those long wings, you can see how long they are, get a lot of thrust and gets them back into the air pretty quickly. Bird on bird crime. I'm always looking for that. And in this case, this is a red-winged blackbird who apparently is not happy with the osprey being too nearby. So it was chasing it all over the sky. And one of the things I've noticed over time is that these small birds, mockingbirds, blackbirds, all kinds of small birds, will take no guff from birds of prey. If they feel like they're in their space or they want to get at them, they will chase after them. And the birds of prey seem to be like, okay, leave me alone, and off they fly. So it was kind of fun to catch this. Soft-shelled turtle over at Merritt Island. This is a little bit different one, darker, but again, I love getting the texture and details of animals, and so you can really get an idea of the structure of the shell and how the the whole package and those intense eyes. Again, all these pictures are taken with a long lens. I am not nearly as close as it looks in the picture. I've cropped this in pretty well. And although oftentimes I think the animals do know that we're there, but if we're outside of their area of distrust, they will act naturally and they will mind their own, do their thing without too much interference from me. This one taken at Merritt Island. Again, there are alligators there as well because we're in Florida. Alligators are everywhere. And this was one of those situations where I kind of wished I had not done this. But I was walking down a road and I turned around and I saw this mother alligator, and there were about 15 babies with this mother alligator, and I was very close. I kind of stumbled on this, and that is a big giant no-no. Alligators in their nests are extremely dangerous, and I was very, very nervous as soon as I saw that. I took a couple of quick shots just because I was there, and then I booked out of there very fast. I do not advocate going near nests, uh, particularly of alligators with, stay at least 20 yards away, 30 yards away or more. I was a lot closer than that, and it was very nerve-wracking. But I love this picture anyway because little Gator feels all nice and safe because he's got mama to take care of things, and so it was kind of fun. And yes, this is an alligator, which and the tricolored heron behind it, I think, is trying to decide whether it's a log or if it's an alligator. It's not quite sure. But between the two of us, when we both took a look and then we both booked out of there. So, but again, it was kind of an interesting shot with the bird trying to puzzle out what exactly it was looking at. The green heron, probably another one of my favorite birds to photograph, especially if you get it in good lighting. And there's many green herons in the Merrill Island area. So it's a good place to go looking for them. This particular one happened to be in beautiful lighting. And again, I love the background. And normally it's the crown of its head is it's smoothed down, but for some reason or other, it got all agitated. I think it was looking at some prey, and it just made a beautiful picture. And you can see why it's called a green heron. It's the green color is really pops out in this particular bird. Probably a very common bird for all of us is the great blue heron. We see them all over the place, on the coast and in marshes and wetlands. Um, but I never turn away from a bird that I've seen many times because you can take that same picture and get a completely different look each time. In this case, I was standing a little bit high and it flew low, and so I was able to get a picture of the top of it in full wingspan. And it's amazing how complex the feather pattern is on these birds, and what it needs to, get into the air and stay in the air and maneuver. Um, so I was really fortunate to get this shot. Again, with the blurred out background, it emphasizes the subject matter, and you don't have anything too busy to take away from looking at the beautiful bird. The American avocet. This is a migratory bird in which you'll find that comes to the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge. Got a very interesting curved up beak, and they'll come and in flocks and feed and do their thing. Again, I have the reflection that I'm looking for and all that stuff. I'm going to keep going. I'm not sure how much time I have. We have a whole lot of things. This is a northern flicker. Again, we're at Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge. And some of the other birds that you'll see there, kingfishers, which are impossible to catch while they're hunting. They're very small, very fast. But one posed for me on a branch. That was great. The birds on the right are the black-necked stilts, and they're a bird with a lot of personality as well. They have big round eyes, look almost human, and they're lots of fun. Okay, that was Merritt Island, and I'm going to head right down to Sebastian Inlet State Park, which is on the East Coast in Sebastian, Florida. And Sebastian is known for ospreys. The inlet itself is a place where the ospreys by the dozens will wait for the tide to shift, and then they will go hunting and diving for fish, and it's a pretty amazing sight. Well worth the trip if you like action photography. We have a classic osprey with a fish. And it's pretty amazing how much weight these ospreys can pull out of the water uh, while they're fully drenched. The Sebastian Inlet has a stone, like seawall that goes between the inlet and the ocean, and it makes for a great background. You can see it looks, when it's blurred out like that, you can see the stone background. This particular osprey has a flounder. One of my favorite pictures of all time was this picture I took at Sebastian. It's a reddish egret, and it was taken in the early morning hours, and it was taken on the shore. And again, looking at the background, I was able to catch this bird contemplating the sunrise with the crashing of the waves behind it. The characteristics of a telephoto lens is that it will bring in things closer than they really look like in real life. So it has really brought in those waves to make them look like they're coming up very close, and it made kind of a dramatic picture. Reddish herons, reddish egrets are wading birds, and it's not common for them to be out on the seashore. They're more likely to be in the marshes or shallow water hunting. And these pictures are a series of pictures of what these reddish egrets look like when they are hunting and doing their thing. They do a kind of a ballet. They jump in the air, they move around, they spread their wings, they create shade so they can see their prey. Um, um, it's quite an interesting display. And of course, you can't discount coastal birds. It's the small birds on the shore. This is a willet, and this is on the beach. And I really like this one because, again, with the soft background and the colors, this particular willet is giving me the side eye, I think. And I thought it was kind of humorous. And I am not nearly as close as this picture makes it look, but it's always fun to get a little sanderling or something like that, a very small bird up close, because you can see the patterns of their feathers and a little bit of their personality. And with the world coming crashing down on them, these little birds, they live in an interesting environment, and sometimes it's nice to get the whole environment and not just the bird, and kind of get it within context. And that's the fun part of the Sebastian Inlet. You have an inlet and you have beaches as well. So you have crashing surf, things like that. Bird on bird crime. We have gulls chasing terns, trying to catch their fish. And that's not uncommon to see over at Sebastian, is the birds chasing each other, trying to get fish the easy way instead of getting it on their own. And sea turtles. There's a lot of sea turtle nesting over at Sebastian. And this green sea turtle was swimming through the inlet and popped its head up, and I was fortunate enough to get his picture. And eagles. There's an eagle nest in Sebastian somewhere, and I was lucky to catch this as it was flying through the park. Now we're going to go to the west coast of Florida, to Fort DeSoto Park. That's in St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. For people who live over there, they already know what a great place that is for bird work and wildlife work. There's a lot of breeding and nesting birds over there. And in this particular case, I got the tern coming in with food for Junior, and Junior is clearly ready for breakfast. The white pelicans also migrate to Fort DeSoto, so you'll see a lot of white pelicans there during the migration, and it's just a beautiful bird to watch in flight. Brown pelicans, common birds on the coast, but it's always fun to get a picture of one doing something other than just standing there. In this case, this one is coming in for a landing, and it was kind of fun. Fort DeSoto is a home to the oyster catchers, and I love the oyster catchers. Again, they look like a Dr. Seuss character, and they have a lot of personality and just a really distinctive looking bird. This is a place called Joe Overstreet. This is in Kissimmee, Florida, another one of my favorite places. It's home to a unique bird called the snail kite. And this is a female snail kite. And that's what they do. They are birds of prey, but they get snails. You know, I can imagine what a fight that must be, snatching a snail out of the water. But it's a real interesting looking bird and kind of rare. There are eagles at Joe Overstreet as well. And I was fortunate to catch this one flying. He has, you can't tell it on a small picture, but if you can see this large, he has a fish in his claws and he's heading toward land to go eat it. The caracara, they're common in central South Florida and Kissimmee on South. And the caracara is a scavenger bird like a vulture, but they're actually, I think they're from the falcon family of birds, but they eat food that's, roadkill and things like that. But they're a very distinctive looking bird. I love this guy because he looks like a grumpy old man saying, "Don't take my picture, leave me alone." Limpkins. The limpkins are a wading bird, and they're common in a lot of parts of Florida now, but they were endangered. And they share the same diet as the snail kite. They eat snails, so they have to be where those snails are plentiful. It's rare to find one in flight, and I was fortunate enough to catch one flying at Joe Overstreet. Other types of birds that you can find there as well, the eastern meadowlarks and sandhill cranes, of course. And Joe Overstreet Landing is just south of Kissimmee. Canaveral, now we're going to go back up to Central Florida to the Canaveral National Seashore, which is right next door to the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge. The Canaveral Seashore is home to a large scrub jay, Florida scrub jay population. And it's really fun to go out there and try to catch some pictures of the scrub jays. My pick should be the bird for Florida. Florida state bird should be the scrub jay. I caught this one eating acorns, and that was kind of fun. Now at Canaveral Seashore, you might also see, wait for it, a falcon. Yeah, see what I did there? Okay, moving right along. Another picture of the scrub jay. It's a beautiful bird and very hard to catch because they're skittish. So I was fortunate. But Canaveral Seashore is where they find scrub jays. Okay, so part of my philosophy is as far as Florida and taking pictures in paradise is that there are places everywhere in Florida, not just wildlife refuges or wetlands, but oftentimes in your own backyard or in city parks and green spaces in urban areas. In this case, my backyard, we planted a lot of pollinator-friendly plants, and we were fortunate that it attracted some. In this case, this beautiful hummingbird. These are some examples of what I found in my own backyard. And starting from left to right, we got a sweat bee on a flower, a zebra wing butterfly, mama cardinal with her feathers all a kilter, a green anole, and another sweat bee on a flower. It was great not having to get into my car and go somewhere to get these pictures. And when that opportunity arrives or presents itself, it's well worth it. More stuff that you can find in your backyard in Florida. Squirrels nesting, a green bee pollinating, another hummingbird picture, a downy woodpecker, and a black racer. Okay, and now talking about city parks and urban areas, Craft Azalea Gardens is in Winter Park, Florida. And every year, it's on the shore of the Winter Park chain of lakes, and it's in a neighborhood. There are houses that are right across the street from it, and it's a very urban, suburban kind of park. Well, every year, dozens of great white egrets come and roost there, build nests, have their babies, and then move on. So this year I was down there and I got this beautiful picture of a great white egret in breeding feathers. Because again, these feathers all disappear after the breeding season is over. And this one was doing its best impression of a peacock. And I just thought it was a lovely picture. And I spent a lot of time at Craft Azalea Gardens this year documenting the roost. And I have a few pictures for you. This, I hope you can see this clearly. This is a mama or papa, great white, playing around. And she has a stick in her mouth. She's fixing her nest. But right below her, if you can see, is a little tiny bobblehead. It's a newly hatched baby. Um, and things are just starting out. When they get a little bit older, they start to get puffy. And these two characters don't look all that happy. I think they're waiting for dinner. And but they look like big giant cotton balls. This is why the great whites come to the Craft Azalea. There's lots of things to get for food for their babies when the babies hatch. And in this case, it's a knoll of some sort. I was fortunate to catch this in mid strike, and the poor lizard didn't have a chance. It's amazing how quick these birds are. And so she'll bring that lizard back to the nest and they'll have a feast. A basic bird portrait. Again, I saw the background that this bird was hunting in this area that had these beautiful purple ground cover, and the sun was shining on and stuff. I just thought that would make a beautiful background, and so I just made a nice portrait. Craft Azalea also has other birds there that I guess hang around as well. In this case, this is the red-shouldered hawk on takeoff, and that was a lucky find as he was taking off right toward me, so I was able to get that picture. And again, that red in the background is part of a house that's across the street. So we are in a very urban area, and which just shows that in Florida, the incredibleness isn't far away. You don't have to drive miles to find, outstanding and beautiful wildlife. Now, these pictures are taken in different parts of the area where I live in Orlando. The pileated woodpecker and the wood duck and the merganser, those three on the bottom, were all taken in a retention pond behind the public shopping center where I shop. I noticed one day driving by that there were birds in there, so I stopped and I peeked in, and this beautiful wood duck and these mergansers were in there, and I was amazed. This is less than a mile from my house, and it's right behind a busy shopping center. The woodpecker was in a tree right over the retention pond area. The owls are taken in a neighborhood across the street from where I live. Every year there's a nesting pair of owls there, and they actually have a sign saying, "Nesting owls, beware." And so again, the fantastic is just not too far away when we're talking about wildlife photography in Florida. This wood duck, I rarely catch a wood duck doing anything other than swimming around. So I was fortunate to get this one taking off. This again is in the retention pond behind the public shopping center where I live. Beautiful birds. I just love these wood ducks. This is the merganser again in the retention pond, eating an acorn. Apparently that's what they were looking for. There were a lot of oak trees surrounding this retention pond, so Apparently it was a good feeding ground. In Orlando, and I'm thinking that in many of the parts of Florida where some of you may live, if you don't live in Orlando, there are probably a botanical garden or a nature garden of some sort. This is Mead Gardens in Orlando. It's a botanical garden. And they have a butterfly garden, and they have flowers, and they have other things. And Mead Gardens is a beautiful, a rich place for pictures like this, the swallowtail butterfly on the plumbago, or a wasp hunting for aphids. I caught this beautiful red-bellied woodpecker eating mulberries. Normally they're pecking at a tree or something like that, but this one decided it wanted a sweet dessert, so it was eating mulberries. At Mead Gardens, there was a nesting swallowtail kite last year, and this crow was not happy about it, so started chasing the swallowtail around. And again, these smaller birds do not take any guff from birds of prey. They'll go right after them and chase them away. Heading south down toward Fellsmere, Florida, which is inland from Sebastian. So if you were to go off the coast heading in about 30 miles, you'd get to Fellsmere. And there was a rookery down there, and they were breeding spoonbills, and I was fortunate enough to catch that. It's called the Fellsmere Water Management Area. It's it's a great spot for wading birds and migratory birds. Again, in Fellsmere, I couldn't get enough of the spoonbills and their juniors. Juvenile cattle egrets. They happen to be at the Fellsmere rookery as well. And I caught these guys playing tag with their hair all, their crowns all raised up. And the St. John's River. Now, the St. John's River, that encompasses a lot of territory, obviously. For me, it's just outside of Orlando, is a intersection of Route 50 and there's a bridge there in the St. John's River, and there's a boat launch, and I go there often because there are all kinds of opportunities to see wildlife. In this case, this is a red-shouldered hawk nest building, and I caught it with a sprig of branch of some sort of tree and heading to make its nest. The caracara, also there was a nesting caracara over there right off the river, and I was able to catch it in flight. I'm not sure what it has in the mouth. It looks like a Dorito, but it could be anything. And on the St. John's River, we have lots of springs that enter into the river. And in those springs will be manatees, especially during the cold winter months. And this curious manatee came up to me while I was in my kayak. I only had a point and shoot camera. I didn't have to have a telephoto lens. Now, it's not good ethics to try to put your hand out and pet them and touch them. This particular one was so curious, though. I think it thought my green kayak was something edible because they like to eat leaves and green things. But it checked me out, and at the right moment, it came up, and I got this picture. And it was one of the other more outstanding creatures that Florida has to offer are manatees. Well worth trying to find photos of them. So I think we are about wrapping it up. This is paradise to me. This is overlooking the St. John's River. Spoonbill in the morning light, the mist coming off the river. I'm hoping that this has inspired people who are into wildlife photography or are thinking about it to go out and find those areas near where they live because in Florida, it's rich. It's a target-rich environment, and I'm hoping that you all got something out of this, and I'm open up for questions. Doug, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. That was outstanding. We do have a couple questions.
I hope I didn't go over my time too much.
I think we still have an audience, so that's the main thing. We're good. Thank you. One question is, do you have any recommendations on affordable cameras for beginners? I'm wanting to move past taking photos on my smartphone, but I'm not ready to invest heavily yet. So any advice on cameras?
Well, yeah, affordable is a relative term, so I'm not sure what kind of price range we're talking. However, I would seriously consider the previously owned market. The technology has advanced to where now they have two types of cameras out. What we call a digital DSLR camera and a mirrorless camera. The newest technology are these mirrorless cameras, and they're phenomenal. But what that's done is that has opened up a huge market for very high quality digital DSLR cameras and lenses for a very affordable price because of they're previously owned. There are some very good companies out there that guarantee their product if they sell it previously owned, and I have been on the previously owned market for many items, including lenses and things like that. So that would be my route. I would look for, I would do some research on some DSLR cameras that might fit your bill, that shoot fast, have good resolution, and things along those lines. And then go out and look for a previously owned one, because I think you can find some that are very affordable and very high quality without having to put
Okay.
that huge investment.
And the camera you use primarily is what brand?
Yes, I use a Nikon D850, which is a digital DSLR. It's not the newest technology, but it has a very high resolution sensor. So it allows me to crop into the picture pretty well if I need to, cut some of the details out of the picture. It'll shoot at high speed so I can get action shots and things like that. There are lots of cameras of that quality in the DSLR camera that are previously owned, that people are switching to their mirrorless technology, are putting their DSLRs on sale. So there are some very affordable options out there for excellent equipment.
Okay. We have a question. What months do you see migratory birds at Orlando wetlands? What's the best time?
Yeah, the migration really starts when it gets starting to get cold up north. So we start seeing the birds coming in mid-October and staying until spring. Probably November, December, February, January and February are the prime times to see migratory birds in good numbers.
Okay. And we'll just do one more question. Any sites you recommend in the Treasure Coast here?
The Treasure Coast.
That'd be down farther south along the southeast coast, kind of.
Well, yeah, Jonathan Dixon State Park would be a great place to go. If you want to go out on, anywhere on the coast, if you want coastal birds and things like that. I would suggest that, I didn't cover a lot of Miami or the Panhandle because I don't drive that far. I shoot locally most of the time. But of course, any of the state parks down there will be great places to go. But offhand, I would say do some research on where the wildlife management areas are in the state parks. There are lots of them.
Okay. Well, thank you, John, so much. That was incredible, the photography. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And this will be this will be in the state parks YouTube site, either tomorrow or Tuesday. And so tune in next month for Christine Smalls. She's going to talk about volunteering in Florida State Parks, which I know some of you probably already volunteer and you can find out more about it. And so thank you so much, John. And I look forward to seeing more photos on Facebook and other venues.
Thank you, Doug. I hope I didn't mumble too much. I appreciate it.
Oh, you did great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.